I did my first co-wholesale deal, and it was a $200,000 assignment fee.
Woo!
I got 100 grand of it. And I walked into my job and said, I'm out.
Peace. I'm out of here.
No, that first year I went on to do just short of $1 million my first year in the real estate business.
Hey everyone, Jamel Gibbs here. Welcome to another podcast episode. Today we have another special guest as usual. And we have a great guest who's going to talk to you about the intricate details of co-wholesaling your real estate investing business. What's up, Zach?
Hey, man, what's happening, brother?
I'm doing all right, man. First off, I want to say thank you for coming on board and be willing to do this podcast. And also, thank you for having me on your Coffee with Closers show as well, man.
Hey, man, that's what it's all about, right? It's about sharing the word, getting the message out there. You do it through your podcast. I do it through my Coffee with Closers shows. I mean, it's all about being not just an influencer, but being a positive influencer. What do I mean by that? It's easy to influence somebody. It's easier to be a positive influencer when you're actually doing what you're talking about.
That's right. That's right, man. And for those of you who didn't catch that show, I'll link it. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to go ahead and link it in the cards up at the top. If you're listening on the podcast, go to youtube.com/Coffee with Closers.
Zach Childress Reviews.
Zach Childress Reviews, or you can catch it on my channel as well at Jamel Gibbs.
Well, it's either Zach. Is it Zach Childress Reviews or Zach Attack Reviews? It's one of the two.
One of the two. You know what I'll do? I'll link it up at the top of this video. So go to my YouTube page at youtube.com/Jamel Gibbs. You're going to see a picture of me and Zach Childress on a thumbnail. And you'll be able to click on that, and I'll link the show in the cards as well as the description as well. But hey, man, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself? How did you get started in real estate investing?
Man, I got started in real estate investment because I didn't know what I was doing, and I believed that I could do it. No, we go back 17 plus years ago, man. I was working in a job, was going nowhere, like everybody else, but the sales manager wanted to motivate all of us. We were called business developers for this company, and wanted to motivate us. So they sent us to this seminar. Well, I was at the seminar and I saw Tom Hopkins speak about real estate, and that was history, man. He had a little 3-day event. I went to it. Next thing you know, I was like, man, I didn't know what I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, I was like everybody else. I thought I had to have good credit. I thought I had to have money. I thought I had all these things. And the instructor was over there just letting me know, like, look, there's wholesaling, there's creative finance, there's all these things. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't know this. And so, back then I'm not where I am today. I didn't have capital. I had really low credit score. So I started off as a wholesaler.
Gotcha. So you started off in the business as a wholesaler. How long did it take for you to get your first deal?
Well, I actually quit my job in the first 6 months.
Nice.
Yep.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That was a great thing for me. I was scared to death. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was scared to death. I mean, I grew up, get a good job. And so I thought I had a good job. They had, insurance packages and all these things. And I was like, yeah. But what I realized was I had a job. I didn't have something I loved. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a job. I wasn't creative anyways, but I'd started into real estate. We had started doing some deals. I mean, we're talking 17 years ago. We're talking 2003. You know what I mean? I was out in California. It was highly competitive. And I didn't know what I didn't know, but I started doing deals. I started making money, and I did my first co-wholesale deal, and it was a $200,000 assignment fee.
Woo!
I got 100 grand of it, and I walked into my job and said, I'm out.
Peace. I'm out of here.
No, that first year I went on to do just short of $1 million my first year in the real estate business.
Awesome, man. And that was you said the first 6 months. What did you end up? I know we're getting a little personal here. What did you end up bringing in the first 6 months?
At first 6 months, I was averaging about 20,000 a month, and then I popped that $100,000 deal. So I was right at about $250,000 when I left, and then that last 6 months, because of all the time I had, I did almost another 700,000 in that last 6 months.
Killed it, man.
Yeah.
And that's when the magic happened.
Oh yeah, and then you realize when you have the freedom and you're doing what you love. Like I used to complain because I was putting in 40, 50 hours a week at my job.
Yeah.
But then when I went full time as an investor, man, I was putting in 12, 14, 16-hour days because I was building something for me. You know what I mean?
Entrepreneur, man. That's the entrepreneur spirit. I agree with that, man, because I work, like, even now, I don't consider this to be work. When we're, when we're working for ourselves, it's not considered to be work. But for me, even now, I've been in the business just as long as you have, since 2002. And I work from the time I get up in the morning until the time I go to bed at night. And even when I'm out with my wife, we're having, some type of business discussion or something like that. That's just what our life is like. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So, it's fun.
It is. And that's the part about like finding what you love, and then your creativity shines, and you're not watching a clock anymore.
That's right, man. So how did you get into, so obviously you did this joint venture, that first joint venture was your $100,000, and you decided to continue co-wholesaling at that point?
Well, let's go back, right? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we go back 17 years. I was in the San Francisco Bay Area, so like it was highly competitive. The market was screaming hot back then. Everybody was doing deals, and I was new. You know what I mean? I was younger than I am now.
Did you grow up in San Francisco? Or?
No, I'm from Alabama.
Gotcha.
But I moved out there chasing my kid's mother, and ended up in California.
Understood.
So, but it was very competitive. And what I found is that I wanted to do more deals. I was full-time, I wanted to go full-time, and I knew that to do more deals, I had to get better, but I didn't have the marketing budget like some of these guys back then. Now, back then, we didn't call them acquisition companies or disposition companies. We didn't use those terminologies, but they were just really good at acquisition. They had door knockers and massive budgets for marketing. And I realized I was having a hard time getting these deals. And so one of the things that it hit me is I had a easier time finding buyers. I was finding a lot of buyers. I was going to a ton of REIAs up in that area. If it was within an hour's driving time, I was going to it. And I was like getting all these buyers. And so my buyers list was growing super fast.
Yeah.
Which then made me realize like I would probably be better off as a disposition expert than the acquisition and trying to compete with everybody. And then that's when the idea hit me. Now, you got to remember, this was back before everybody was out there talking about co-wholesaling or joint venture. Like, this wasn't something that was taught. I mean, they just didn't teach it. And so I said, well, I had this idea. I said, well, let me go around to all my competitors and just ask them, like, hey, what do you do with the leads you don't sell or close on? And they're like, oh, if we don't do anything with them, we throw them away. I said, what if instead of throwing them away, I would come by and I'd pick them up. And if I sell any of them, I'll give you half of whatever I make. And they were like, okay. Well, I started doing that with a few of them. And I started, the number one guy that I hit first, which actually created a domino effect. His name was Rusty Simmons. And he was with Simmons Realty. And they also had a company called Golden Lily Flag Properties, which was their wholesaling acquisition side. And I was knocking on this guy's door, trying to get him to do business with him. Well, finally he called me up one day. He said, I got a deal for you. And I was like, okay, well, I'm like, what's the contract? He said, 900,000. I said, what? Like 900,000? Oh my God. I said, what's it worth? He said, it's worth $1 million. I was like, how am I going to sell that? I was like, that's insane. I can't sell that. He's like, well, you want my business? Sell this one. So eventually, through a long story, I ended up doing some creative stuff, finding somebody that would come look at it. What I identified is this property was on the way into Napa Valley. To the right of Napa Valley is this huge like foothills. Well, at the top of that foothill is called Angwin, and the property was up in Angwin. Well, all the other houses over there had already been torn down and built back up 5, 6, 7, $8 million homes. So I started calling some builders. I had a couple of them meet me out there, and one guy rolls up and he said, "What do you want for it?" I said, $1.1 million. And he said, "Okay, who do I make the check to?" I was like, "Oh man, that was too easy. I could have got more."
You said 1.1 million, huh?
Yeah, and Rusty had it under contract for 900,000.
Right. So that's how you made the 200 grand.
That's how I had the $200,000 fee, and I got 100 of it. And that was when I quit my job. And I realized in that moment that that was where I needed to niche. I needed to niche in being the disposition specialist. And that's where co-wholesaling was born. And I co-wholesaled for years and years and years. And then I guess it was about 8 or 10 years ago, I created the course on co-wholesaling. I own the domain. I have the trademark, and launched it out to the world. And it's one of those proud moments for me, Jamel, is because now I see other people out there teaching it too, right?
Yep.
And it's like, man, like that's something that I brought in and like coined it.
Contribution, man.
And yeah, and I'm happy other people are teaching it, because it is such a less aggressive way of looking at a market, especially when it's highly competitive, because the whole mindset is don't compete when you can join together and really co-wholesale on deals, whether you want to be more on the acquisition side and you're just focused on finding them and teaming up with somebody that's on the disposition side, or you're on the disposition side. And so that was really how it all started, man. And I just co-wholesaled for years. And then we started sharing it, like I said, I think it was 8 years, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. My daughter was 1, so maybe 9 years ago.
Gotcha. So let's talk about some of the steps that it takes to get into co-wholesaling.
Well, if you're going to get into co-wholesaling, one of the key factors is understanding who are your wholesalers in the market, right? It's really getting super clear on who they are, communicating with them, finding out like what they specialize in. What you'll find is there are a lot of wholesalers that do specialize in acquiring leads, and they're not really good at selling them. And then it's really figuring out your strength. Are you good at marketing, or are you good at just, working with buyers? You might be good at both, and that's fine, but it's identifying what we call your co-wholesale partners. And so you have your selling partners and you have your buying partners, which would be acquisition or disposition in the new world of language.
Right. So, I got to tell you too, man, like for me, I find my company, we're great at finding leads. We're good at selling them as well. But I want to say maybe the last 10, 20 deals we've done, another wholesaler has actually sold those houses, and we split the profits with them. Even on some of the creative stuff that we've done recently, a lot of wholesalers who they get these buyers who come in, and the buyers are not necessarily cash buyers, but they're looking for a property and they have a fair amount of money to put down.
Yep.
These individuals, these other wholesalers, they'll pass over the buyers, and we just split the down payment with them.
Yep,
absolutely.
Just another just creative being able to provide a better deal structure too. You know what I mean? And I'll give you an example. There's a large company out in Arizona. They do about 600 to 700 wholesale transactions a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I met the guy in Birmingham, and he told me that about 70% of all of his deals are sold through another wholesaler as a disposition. They're finding them and pushing them through his operation, and he's putting buyers on them.
Yep. I love it, man. I mean,
it's just a way to do more deals, man.
Yep.
and to not let one of your leads go away. And look, let's just be honest. There's also another even hybrid model to this, because look, a lot of people want to get into wholesaling, but they don't have the money to market for sellers, or they don't have the ability to find buyers, but they can still facilitate a co-wholesale deal.
Right.
Look, one of the things I'll do at the end is I'll give everybody a free blueprint to this whole layout. And there's a video in there of where I actually took a guy locally. He never had done real estate before. He had no money. And we recorded, I think, 5 videos of us taking him through facilitating a co-wholesale deal. And he got a property from a wholesaler, so he didn't spend any money. He found it from a wholesaler, and then he found another wholesaler who had a buyer, and then he was able to facilitate that deal, and he still made $4,000. Never had a buyer, never had a seller.
Awesome, man. So it's almost like they're, like you said, it's a hybrid of co-wholesale, almost like an arbitrage type of thing.
It is exactly like arbitrage in funds, right? But you're just doing it from a facilitation point of view.
Exactly.
So that's to answer your question, that's one step. Another huge step that I see a lot of guys who try to do co-wholesaling do it wrong is whenever someone sends you a property, you got to research that address, because like if the other company's already marketing it at say 95,000, and then you're out there trying to market for 100 or 105, well, a smart investor is going to Google the address to see the other marketers, ad for the property, and it kills your credibility.
Right.
That's why one of our processes is when we meet these other wholesalers is we're very clear, like, we'll bring the half the transaction, the buyer, but we split the wholesale fee. If they say to us, well, we're not going to split our fee, but you can add yours on top of it, that's fine too. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as they haven't blasted it all over the web at one price, right? And so just got to be careful with that.
Yeah, because then it becomes a daisy chain type.
They laugh at you. They laugh at you because they go, look, you try to sell it to me for 105, I can buy it from this guy for 95. He's got a link online for it.
Then you look like the idiot, and because it's all over the place. You know what I mean? So you definitely want to stay away from daisy chain types of deals as well.
Yep.
That daisy chain deals were big, especially when the market tanked. We're talking 10 years ago, and everybody was trying to do bulk REO. If you remember,
I was in the middle of that. Oh my gosh, man. I'd be on a phone call. There'd be like 15 people on there, and you're like, ping, ping, ping. Who's that?
Everybody knew about those deals, man. That was the main problem that a lot of investors had at that time. We're talking 2008, 2009.
Yeah, a long time ago, man. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I was in the REO tape business myself, and man, it's like, are you direct to the seller? Yes. All right, let's have a conference call. Ping, 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 ping. People join in the call. You're like, what are all these people doing here?
So if our listeners wanted to get started in, let's just say step one, step two, let's give them a 3-step process. They want to get started in co-wholesaling at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So step one is obviously identifying your strengths. Should I be more on acquisition? Should I be more on a disposition if I'm going to co-wholesale? Step two is then identifying your co-wholesale partners, as we call them, right? Getting into your market, looking at these other wholesalers, finding them on social media, finding them from bandit signs, actually having the phone call. We actually have a script for it, where you call them up and you just ask them this. If they say this, you say this. If they say this, you say this. That walks you through that dialogue to determine if that wholesaler is a acquisition wholesaler or a disposition wholesaler, so you can categorize them in the right way, because you might be able to facilitate, or you might be able to sell or buy off of for your buyers. And so it's really building that front to it. And then, so that's step one. Step two is find them. Step three is, getting on the phone and categorizing them where they're going to go. But then step four is always getting into the paperwork, right? Like protecting yourself. And so we have what's called a service provider agreement that our attorneys had drawn up for us, so that we're not crossing the lines of like agent relationships, but we're more acting as a marketing firm for lead generation. It's the exact same contract we use when we sell the leads to like agents. Like when we do marketing and get leads that we don't buy or can't do anything to, well, we'll sell those leads to an agent who might get a listing out of it as a marketing company.
Right.
So it's really getting clear on that paperwork, getting a clear dialogue with them. I believe that if you're doing it locally, you should always have a belly-to-belly meeting with these wholesalers, just to kind of see what they got, what's going on with them. And then now that relationship has a solid foundation. You've identified what your strengths are. You've identified who they are in the market. You've categorized them. And then you've laid out a foundation, which is an agreement between each other on how you're going to get paid and what your role is going to be.
Love it, man. So you're eliminating your marketing budget by not having to go out and find deals if you're not on the acquisition side. If you're on a disposition side, that's actually, you're basically getting other wholesalers deals.
That's
and
right.
then turn it around and you're building. So on the disposition side, your focus is to build a buyer's list at the
That's
end
right.
of the day. That's what you want to be doing.
That's your whole focus.
Right. And then on the acquisition side, you need to be finding deals. And then you have to find out what your strength is and then stick with it and then find a person on the other end. Like in my case, I have multiple people that sell my deals for me.
Yeah.
And that's primarily because, we have an acquisitions side of the business, but I used to do all the disposition myself. I haven't built out a strong enough disposition part of the business. It's been 18 years. I've had it at one point, but since I moved here to North Carolina, I haven't built out that strong enough disposition team. And plus a little bit was because I'm a little bit of a control freak in my business.
Yeah.
But, I feel good sending out my leads to other wholesale. And we have a buyer's list. We have about 1,000 people on our buyer's list, which means nothing because you're only going to end up doing business with
maybe
small,
10 of them.
in our case, 5 of them. Yeah. Right. But we frequently have 2 to 3 wholesalers that sell everything that we put out. So that's co-wholesaling in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm still a disposition in my own market for people. Even though I do acquisitions and disposition for my business, I still have companies that bring deals to me and say, hey, Zach, we got this. Can you sell it?
Right.
And sometimes you'll find that like not every deal you get is going to be the right fit for your buyers. So you want disposition partnerships, right? You want these other, because they have different buyers.
Right.
So like our rule of thumb is we'll send it out to our buyers. We should know within 48 hours if we've got some interest. If 48 hours pass and we don't have a lot of like interest in it, then we'll kick it over to these other wholesale partners and say, hey, go see if you can find a buyer. Here's our fee on this. You get half of it. It's $15,000. We'll give you $7,500 for it. Right. And sometimes what we know with some of our co-wholesale partners on the disposition side, they'll come back and say, hey, I got a buyer for even more. And we're like, great. You got 20 of them. Now you got 10, we got 10, So there's all kinds of reasons why you do that. But I wanted to circle back around for like the new people watching this. So as a new person, you might only lean in on this strategy just to build up some capital so that you can do your own marketing to create your own acquisition side and then just do it all yourself. But what you'll find is as you lean into that and you start to build the business, there's still always some deals that your buyers just aren't interested in.
Right.
So it's always advantageous of you to have those disposition partners, even when you open your wholesaling company up to be an acquisition side as well.
Love it, man. Just to kind of circle back around on what you were just saying in regards to, let's say a buyer another wholesaler were to find a buyer who paid more money. And I just recently had a couple of deals like that. One of them, I negotiated, I wanted a certain amount of money. They could have whatever they want on top of that. So initially it was I think it was like a $20,000 or maybe $15,000 assignment fee. I negotiated, out of that 15,000, I need 10. And if you could get more for yourself, then that's entirely up to you. That's kind of the way we worked that deal out. And then his buyer came back. We basically bought the house. It was a $25,000 home. We sold it for 40. I was asking for 35 on my end. He came and said, I'll sell it and I'll add a little bit more to cover my fee. So I made the 10,000. He made whatever he put on top of it. But then his buyer came back and wanted him to take care of some of the closing costs as well. I think it was the taxes or something like that. So that ended up coming out of his half. I wasn't affected by that. So would you say, my whole point in bringing this up is, would you say it's more effective to control the deal on the acquisition side versus the disposition side?
Well, that's good, because that's actually one of the things we talk about in the blueprint is that, you got to remember there is a process of who's going to control what, right? Typically, the acquisitions partner has most control because they have the contract with the seller, which means that contract is what has to be assigned to the buyer. And so on the disposition side, they're typically giving their buyer up, because they're having to sign an assignment agreement and all of that.
Right.
So that is something that, it's just inevitable. Like, the acquisition person has most control, because they have the contract with the seller. But how do you stay safe? And I think that's in our step 7 or step 8, which is, if you're the acquisition person, well, you're obviously safe because you're not going to give up your contract until you're paid, right? On
Right.
the wholesaling side. Where on the disposition side, you don't want to always, say, oh, it's a $15,000 check, write it over to XYZ company, and then go to XYZ company and hope you get paid, right? So in that case, sometimes, depending on where you are financially, we'll have the buyer to write the check directly to us, and then we'll write a check to the acquisition company, for their portion of it, so that we can stay in control of where the money's at. I think at the end of the day, co-wholesaling is really an art of building strong long-term relationships. People will say to me, yeah, but Zach, how do you stop them from going around you? Well, you're not. You know what I mean? What I'm going to stop is them from ever doing it again to me.
Right.
Right? That's what I'm going to stop. And there's no
Right.
reason, if that's the way they are and they're shady, you shouldn't be doing business with them anyways.
That's
But
right.
sometimes you don't know that until they've burned you. Well, I can say this: out of the decade I've been doing this, I've never been burned on a co-wholesale deal. I've never been burned, because most people doing this are like you and they're like me. They're trying to build this. They're trying to have integrity. They're trying to build good friendships and relationships, and they're trying to, be consistent at that. You can't do that by burning bridges everywhere. You know what I mean? Because co-wholesaling is really an art of being a great networker. It's about knowing people and, getting out there and shaking hands. And so, but we do teach not how to have most control over the deal, because really you don't have the control. The acquisition person does, but it's how to stay safe and make sure you get paid.
That's right.
Right?
That's right, man. I mean, that's what it all boils down to. We're all in this to make a profit and take care of our families. That's what
Right.
it's all about, man. So wholesaling is obviously a great investment strategy. Now, what if you come across a buyer that wanted to tap into the creative side of things, or you wanted to, let's just say, for example, you had a buyer on your end, and you're on the disposition side, and you have a lease option type of buyer. What do you do in that scenario?
Same thing. So you can still, do a co-wholesale deal only in a scenario when it's a option wholesale, right? Because, it's not a true wholesale deal if I have a tenant buyer, because if they
Right.
had cash, they wouldn't be, you know what I mean? They wouldn't be coming to do a creative tenant buyer program. But we do option wholesale, co-wholesale deals. So if I know investors out there that are securing terms deals, right? But let's say that they're controlling a property through a lease option, but there's no cash flow coming off of that deal. Well, they don't want to hold on to it. So instead, they'll take the option, an assignment of option. They would bring it to us and say, hey, look, I've got this deal. It's already structured on a terms. I've got an assignment of option rights. We would go find a tenant buyer, and let's say that tenant buyer was going to put down, I don't know, $8,000 as the option consideration fee. Well, then we just split that with the other wholesaler, and then they assign the option to that new tenant buyer. So now that tenant buyer steps in on the terms agreement that the wholesaler negotiated.
Got it. Got it. So what would, and this is a question I know a lot of people are going to ask, especially those getting started, what is it going to take for someone to get started co-wholesaling? Do you think
Great
this is
question.
one of the best ways
Yeah.
to get started?
It's actually one of the fastest ways to get started, because you're not having to wait on all the marketing. The wholesalers are already out there. They've already got everything, right? The video I was telling you about that we recorded with Brett, the guy locally that we did we did that with him over a 7-day period.
Wow.
In 7 days, we took him from rookie to walking out with $4,000. Never had a property under contract, never had a buyer. We just taught him the facilitation part. It's actually an amazing video series to watch. I mean, it was like, it's firsthand. It's us out in the field, us on the phone, like we're going through the whole thing. But we did that in 7 days. So I know it can be done in 7 days.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy, man.
But it's specialized knowledge, right? And so that's where they had the benefit. Like most people never heard of this back then, right? But realistically, I would say a co-wholesale deal can typically be done in 14 to 30 days if you're already tapping into wholesalers who have deals and you're already able to build a buyer's list. Like you can start building buyers within 14 days, posting ads, being on social media, being at your REIAs, networking, going to the auctions, meeting buyers, like getting out there and hustling, right? So then in 14 days, you find a wholesaler who has a deal. You've already got 15, 20 buyers. You show it to one of them, within, 21 to 30 days, you're getting paid and you're moving on. So
let's talk about that. Let's say when someone was interested in disposition, a lot of people are intimidated by acquisition. I don't know why. Well, a lot of people just
getting on the phone. They don't want to get on the phone.
So they'll feel more comfortable getting out and actually talking to other buyers.
Right.
What are some of the ways that you recommend to go out there and find buyers to start building that buyers list?
That's a great question. So, I tell everybody, look, if you're looking for the free ways, right, there's always two ways. There's paid and there's free. If you're looking for the free way, you got to get out to the public and private auctions.
Right.
Okay. The public auction is the one that's typically in your area. It's on the courthouse steps. Just hang out in the back, see who's raising their hands, see who's winning bids, see who's even trying to win bids, and talk to them. Let them know what you do. Look, these people are there buying properties. They don't care if it's coming from the auction or if it's coming from you. They're just looking for deals, and you got to go out and talk to them. The other way is these private auctions. We have a lot of private auctions here locally. They're kind of like auction.com, but they actually go out. You go out to a house and bid on it. You'll find buyers there too. So those are two really easy ways that those meetings are typically every week. You can go out and rumble through those. The third one is actually going to a REIA. Finding a local REIA, Real Estate Investors Association, in your market, or several of them, and actually going to them. And, in a lot of REIAs, they'll let you like stand up and say, hey, look, I've got this deal, or I've got this deal, or this is what I'm looking for. You need to own that. You need to stand up and say, hey, look, I'm getting deals sent to me that I don't want, but I'm happy to hand them off to a buyer. If you're a buyer in the room, I'd like to talk to you, and let them come to you. And so that, they're coming to you asking for your help. So from REIAs to auctions, calling management company. Here's a golden nugget for you. I tell people this all the time, but most people won't do it. But management companies are literally a golden nugget for you if you're wholesaling deals that are cash flow rental properties, because management companies, their whole database is landlords. And their goal is to get their landlords to acquire more properties so that they can rent them out and collect their management fee. So if we get a deal, we'll build a flyer from it. We'll call 15, 20 management companies in town, as long as it's a rental house. And we'll say, hey, we've got this opportunity. Would you send this out to all your landlords? And if any of them are interested, you get another house to manage.
Yeah.
And
that's
free.
A tip that I shared one time. I did a video on YouTube. It was in regards to Go Section 8. You ever heard of GoSection8.com?
I know it very well. You can click and find the person's name and phone number.
Find everything you want. In fact, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to link it in the cards above.
That's a great strategy, by the way. And we teach it as well. And we've done it over many years. Is like, look, go to this site, click on, owner's information. If it's a person's name and phone number, that's an individual renting that out.
That's right, man.
If it's a management company, call them too.
Get in contact with them. That's right. So one thing I will say about the auction strategy that you were talking about, the good thing about focusing on people who go to auctions are these people. First of all, you have to be qualified. You have to have capital to go there. So that if they're raising their hand, chances are, almost 100% of the time they have the money to purchase a property. So if they're raising their hand,
unless they don't know how an auction works.
That's right. That's right. And then they're going to get stuck with the tab anyway, so it doesn't matter. So you definitely know if they're raising their hand in an auction, they're a cash buyer. So I love that strategy, number one. Number two, I love the simple fact of going down to the REIAs as well. In my local market, maybe you have them in your market as well. We have what's called deal maker sessions where, it's kind of like going to a REIA. The difference is you're bringing deals there and then seeing if you could get rid of the deals to buyers there. So if you have deal maker sessions in your local market, then you need to be there to find these cash buyers because people are actually going there to do deals. And if you don't have one, start one in your local area. Become the authority in that
Yeah.
area. I had a conversation
So,
with Brian Tripp about that.
oh yeah. Oh, Brian. Here's another good one for you, and goes back to building relationships, but working with title companies. Title companies are huge for us because if I'm meeting with title companies, either they're referred by the REIA or referred by somebody else, I set meetings with them. I go down and talk to them, and I'm always asking them like, hey, you guys got a big buyer that come through? Oh yeah. We got 3 of them that close every single week. Hey, look, if I got a deal that I can't close, I'd love to get it to these guys. Can you create an introduction for me? And
Love
they're
it.
like, yeah, because they want to close more deals, right? So it's always looking at it from that approach. Then you can get into some of the paid ways, but another free way is, just getting on social media, right? Finding out all the investment groups that are out there, the investment pages in your area, and letting people know what you do. I mean, just getting the message out there. And then obviously there's always what we refer to as micro marketing. Our micro marketing is where if we get brought a deal, and we look at that deal and it's in this neighborhood and we're not getting any hits, we can actually go in and pull a radius around that property of buyers who have bought those properties without owning them, or not own, but without occupying them. So they're investor properties. And then we will micro that out. And it might be, a small area with maybe 200 prospects, but then we'll drop postcards to them and say, hey, we noticed you bought a house in this same zip code. We have another one you might be interested in. Give us a call. And so we're not marketing to a whole city or a whole
Right.
county, but we're micro marketing specifically to buyers that we know are buying right there where the property is we're trying to disposition.
Love it, man. And going back to what you were talking about with Facebook groups, actually, when I first moved here to North Carolina, I started a Facebook group. So if not only can you go out and find groups in your local area and then start building relationships there, but start your own group. You become an authority figure that way.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, deals will start coming your way as well. Right now in my group, I believe we have 600 members or so. I'm not even marketing it. It just runs itself. People post stuff all day, every day. And
so here's something that we do a little different on that. Now we have a group too, over 1,200 members, but I make it to where all posts have to be approved.
Yeah.
And the reason I do that is so when someone's posting a deal, I see it first.
Oh man. That's genius. I might have to change the settings.
So mine is set to where all posts have to be approved. So I'll go through it and be like, okay, approve. Oh, a deal. Oh, let me reach out to this guy.
Yeah, I like
so then
that.
I'll look at it. If it's not for me, I'll approve it and let it post out there. But it's a way for me to control first look at the deals.
Gotcha. Yeah, we approve all members, but we don't necessarily approve all posts. But I like that model.
Yeah. So, and I don't approve all members neither. Our 1,200 plus members are only specifically here in Northern Alabama.
Got it. Yeah, we definitely approve all members.
Because I've got like 100 and something people in the waiting that are like from California, New York. And I'm like, I mean, here's my theory. Like it's a group designed not to try to wholesale nationally, but it's a group designed here in Northern Alabama. And, I just see a lot of the posts that come through. So it has no relevance to us here.
Awesome. Zach Childress, guys, it has been a real pleasure having you on our call today, man. We really appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us. If you had to give, let's say, some last words to our listeners, what would those words be?
There's I could talk for hours on this, right?
Yeah.
But one thing I always like to say to people is something that I was told myself 17 plus years ago. And it was, Zach, from a guy that was already in real estate said to me, he said, Zach, what's something that you could do today, a choice you could make today that in 10 years from now, you would look back and thank you for making that choice? And I encourage everybody to think about that. Look, the journey always seems hard before you start it, right? It gets easier as you get more specialized knowledge, you get a coach, you get a mentor, you get somebody to show you the way to get there faster. But it gets easier, and then the momentum builds. The hardest part for a lot of new investors that I see is, look, they'll make the commitment and they'll jump in and start building that momentum, and then they'll let something get in the way, and then it goes back down, and then they realize they got to start all back over again and try to come back up. And so it's just being consistent, like staying in it to win it. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not some, unicorn and cupcake and rainbows. Like, this is work. I mean, you're going to get out there and you're going to put work in, and you're going to build something that, yes, you will thank you for doing it down the road, because next thing you know, you're going to turn around, you're going to have rental properties and commercial deals and money in the bank, and you're going to be like, man, I'm glad I stuck into that journey. And so, I just share that with people. I'm not a guy that's going to get on here and tell people go make $1 million in 6 months. It's just, it's just not realistic for most people. But guys, it's super easy for you to get out there, stick to a plan, follow a model, and make $200,000-$300,000 a year from this business. It is absolutely doable, but it's not going to get handed to you. You got to go get it.
Interesting, man. How long do you think, and this is just kind of double backing on what you were saying here, how long do you think it will take the average investor to be able to retire from this business?
Well, actually, that's a good question. We talk about this all the time with my coaching students. We build what's called a bell curve. And what I have noticed over time is it depends on knowledge and it depends on resources. Okay. Those two things make a huge factor in how quickly they can get to the top of the curve, which is the retirement downside. And we see 2 to 6 years.
2 to 6 years. I was saying an average of 5.
Yeah.
An average of 5. Which is about right. It falls right within that.
That's what we see. And it's such a broad window because, look, some people start with a lot of resources and a lot of time so they can get, and here's the other factor. Everybody's different. Like, what is your number to retire? Some people's is lower and some are higher, right? So it's not like, one person, it's going to take 3 years. It depends. What are their resources? What is their retirement number? I mean, I've seen people do it in 2 years. They had a low number. They had resources going in. So they hit that in that 2-year mark, where others had higher numbers. I mean, I'm working with one student right now. Their retirement number is $40,000 a month. That's because his wife makes $380,000 a year, right? And so they're like, when we hit that number, we'll retire. But because of their resources and the strategy that we're working with them on, which is housing, student housing around universities, they get almost a 2 factor on the houses they're buying. So they're making like 45% cash on cash return on these deals. So their model is, they're a 4-year model. Like, they're going to be able to pull it off in 4 years because they've niched student housing, because they're renting the rooms out, right? So the rental income is so much higher. So everybody's different, but you got to look at it from those factors.
Right. And then everybody's circumstances are different, like you said.
Absolutely.
Perfect, man. Awesome call. Now, I know you wanted to talk about your blueprint a little bit.
I'll just give it to them. There's no charge to it. I'll just give it to them. It's a little blueprint. You can pick up it. You'll download it to your computer. You just go to co-wholesaling.com, www.co-wholesale.com, co-wholesaling.com. And
awesome. Co-wholesaling.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll go ahead and link it in the description for you as well. And, what are your favorite books that you're reading right now?
Oh man, I got one that's real good right here. Now this is kind of advanced. Okay.
Big Shifts Ahead.
Yeah. It's written by John Burns. I don't know if you follow this guy, but he's a data guy. He's I always have a hard time saying the word, an economist. So he's always looking at the economy. This whole book is about migration, population, the financial world, where the markets are going. Right. So it's a lot of cool stuff in there.
Awesome, man. And any final words for our listeners here?
final words is do something, man. Like this market ain't going to stay like this forever.
That's right.
Like you got to get it while the getting's good. Don't be a fence rider. Look, you had plenty of years to be a fence rider. This is the time to be in. Like,
Yeah,
however you can get in, you need to be in.
That's right. Are you concerned about the what's going on with the talks of the market shifting at all?
Of course I'm concerned with it. I mean, as an investor, our job is to manage risk, right? And so, I'm always looking at the risk in the market, but I bank with a lot of banks in town. So I know the vice presidents, and I'm always sitting down with them at least every couple of months saying, hey, where are we at? What's the board saying? What's the board saying? But, in our area, we're a little bit different. We typically don't see a turn until after like major markets like California, Nevada, Arizona, Florida take turns. But they're all saying, look, we've got 2 to 3 years strong. Like they're like, we don't see any changes happening, any curves coming our way right now. Like they're like, go get it, Zach.
Awesome, man. Love it, love it, love it, man. Zach Childress, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the line today. Guys, it has been a pleasure having you guys on as well. Check out co-wholesaling.com. Once again, if you're listening to this on the podcast, go to co-wholesaling.com. If you're watching it on YouTube, I'll link it in the description, or you could just
I think it's ZachChildressReviews.com or YouTube.com/Zach Childress Reviews.
Yeah, if you go to my page, if you're on my page, it will show up on the side column as one of my
you linked us together, didn't you?
Yeah, I linked it. Yep, because you're awesome, man.
Because we're cool like that, man.
That's right, man. Brothers. Hey, man, it's been a pleasure having you, and I look forward to doing this again sometime in the near future.